So this is a short discussion on AOE and what I use as a buffer. Um, so the object of fixing the AOE of a gun is to push the piston body back a bit, okay, wherein it should meet the gear tooth, the pickup tooth of the piston body should mesh with the very first sector gear tooth almost as flat as possible. So under spring tension, okay, it should match like that. So it can be perfected, but of course as long as you make sure that it's pushed back a bit by probably, I added a buffer which is probably 2.5 to 3 mm thick. Okay, so what do I use as a buffer? What I use is the original buffer from another cylinder head. The reason why I choose to use this is because it's a lot tougher than almost any aftermarket buffer that I've come across. Okay, and as you can see here, it matches perfectly with the stock rubber buffer which is installed on the cylinder head. Here's an example of something that I don't like using. This is an aftermarket sorbo pad. Okay. One reason why I don't like it is because it's too soft. See, if you try pressing on it, even with your finger, it easily deforms. It doesn't seem to like a lot of lubricants, and it takes forever to go back to its normal shape. We have to remember that this is under a lot of pressure, especially when you're dealing with heavy springs 150, 160 and above. It's going to put a lot of stress on the cylinder head, and it transfers it over to the gearbox. Even with 600 fps builds, I always make sure to use the stock cylinder head. This is probably the best that you can use. I don't advise using aluminum cylinder heads because it shocks the gearbox a lot more compared to the stock one, which is made of plastic. So this is an example of a cylinder head that's aluminum. Okay. The best thing to use is always the one that came with the gun. I've always done that. And the big difference now is this build is for the AK-74, which is a ground up build, so it's currently using a deep fire gearbox. Deep fire gearboxes can be choosy sometimes with the type of cylinder head that you use. Brands play a very big factor. One thing that I've never encountered issues with is using stock cylinder heads. If you try using a cylinder head from, let's say, Garter Element, or even Sistema aluminum cylinder heads, there's a good chance that you'll need to modify it by enlarging the hole. Okay, along with filing down the front part of the cylinder head so that it would match properly. Okay, this is very critical. If you're going to use an aluminum cylinder head, you have to make sure that when you close it down, the nozzle, okay, the cylinder head tube should be perfectly centered. inside the recess of the gearbox, the hole here. If it doesn't match up, or you're having problems closing down the gearbox, there's a good chance that you have to look at it a lot more closely and have to file down some parts, which I don't like, because it's very easy to make errors, and it's probably not going to help in the long run unless you're very careful and unless you're very precise with the way you're filing it down. There's a good chance that you can screw it up. So I'm going to use, for this build, a deep fire piston body, of course, modified, so that it matches the gears properly. So there should be no binding along the side of the piston tooth, and you have to make sure that you file that down, along with removing this is something that you don't normally see other people do. There's a part here, okay, the plastic part here that holds down the tooth rack. You have to cut it down, because the infinite gears will chew that up. And almost every build that that is brought to me, okay, for servicing, okay, if it was built by someone else, I always see this part being chewed up, and I don't like that, because it makes a mess inside the gearbox. So what we're after is, of course, the cleanliness of the gearbox. So that's technically how I ensure the AOE is perfect, okay? And the benefits of making sure, the benefits of doing this is you're ensuring the life of your gearbox. It will definitely last a lot longer, because you're putting in double the rubber buffer that was initially installed, okay? And of course, you're ensuring that the pickup tooth meshes properly with the first tooth of the secondary gear. So without that, I'll just show you the reasoning for that. So without that, the gear would actually look like that when it's being picked up by the sector gear. So the teeth will mesh that way, and it would cause a flat part to develop on this very edge of the pickup tooth, and it will put undue stress on the back part of the piston body. So you'll notice that after some time, piston bodies will develop, especially deep fire piston bodies, will develop cracks along this line, okay, because it's not pulling the tooth rack back. Part of the pressure is pushing the tooth rack up, okay. So that's the reason why it starts to crack. So that's a short video of why I do what I do. Okay, so catch you guys next time.